Zach is back. It's the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in on this Monday. Time right now in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios, 4:17. Eagles lose in Seattle yesterday, 26-15. Nelson Agholor, another awful game. Someone that isn't awful, he actually does a great job covering the Eagles for Philly Mag and BGN Radio. That's Brandon Lee Gowton, who joins us right now to talk about the Eagles game from yesterday. Brandon, appreciate a few minutes, and how are you?
Hey, Zach. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you for coming on. So everyone knows what happens yesterday in the Eagles game. It pretty much went how I expected it, but the big news out of that game was the play of Nelson Agholor. Had a crucial penalty that negated a big 50-plus yard touchdown and had a big drop right after that. How about the Eagles wide receiver yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, as soon as Nelson Agholor made those mistakes, the game was kind of over. I think it's kind of usually hard to assign blame to a player like that. There's so many plays in a game, there's so much time, but it really felt like the Eagles, were moving the ball relatively well against a tough Seattle defense, running the ball decent, passing the ball decent, and then that sequence happened, and it all just went downhill from there. I think the Eagles only had something like 47 yards on their next 7 drives. The offense just totally stalled, and things really snowballed and really got out of control. And it was a shame for the Eagles because they easily could have been up 14-13 and hopefully building on that momentum.
No question deflating and definitely changed that team's personality for the rest of the game. Today we know Paul Turner's going to the 53-man roster. We heard what Doug Peterson had to say earlier in the day today on this Monday. And my poll question today is, will the Eagles sit Nelson Agholor on Monday night against the Packers? Do you think Doug Peterson sits him down for this big Monday night game?
I don't know if he totally keeps him inactive because of the Eagles situation at receiver. It's not like they have a lot of great bodies there to work with to replace Agholor with. At the same time, I feel like he absolutely should be inactive given how bad he's been, and just it's not even like he's just invisible out there. He's making these mistakes that are really hurting the team. I think it's detrimental to have him active, and I think I think a lot of issues are talent with Agholor, but you have to see how the post game comments of him even admitting he can't get out of his own head, and think the Eagles might be best off if they just sit this guy.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that because the comments after the game were very telling. And another thing that when I look back at that play, Greg Lewis was imploring him to get lined up. The coaches knew that he wasn't lined up. It makes me wonder, why didn't they call a timeout if they knew they were going to get a penalty?
It's a fair question. I think you really shouldn't have to call a timeout. That's the thing. I mean, to burn a timeout there and in that situation, that game, it's a very difficult. It just seems like, if the ref is telling him and Greg Lewis is telling him both on the sideline there, I think you kind of just hope that he kind of catches that. It seems pretty routine. You see on every single play where NFL receivers are always looking to the sideline to check, they're lined up correctly. I don't know why he did not do that in that situation, Nelson Agholor. So I can't really fault Doug too much for not calling the timeout. I really think it's on Agholor there.
No question, because it's such a simplistic thing. As someone that's played football, and I was an offensive lineman, I wasn't a wide receiver, but you always hear those things when they tell the wide receiver, make sure you check with the official. It's such a thing that's even taught in Pee Wee football, so it's definitely a bad job out of Nelson Agholor. No one's debating that, but he's still young, and I know I've been one of his biggest critics. He's been awful in the year and change here in Philadelphia, almost 2 years. Is it just that he can't deal with this pressure in Philadelphia? Or maybe if he goes to, let's say, a smaller city, you think there's any hope left in the career of Nelson Agholor? For
Nelson Agholor's Eagles career, I don't think there's much hope. I've just not seen the talent. I'm not seeing the mentality there. I've watched Nelson Agholor in training camp and preseason after he had a bad rookie year last year. And this offseason, he just didn't look very good. There was never really a moment or any kind of consistency, at least, where he really just stood out and you saw that first-round talent. And obviously the mental issues have been a big problem for him as well. Maybe a change of scenery would help him down the road, but, I'm almost at the point where I don't believe he's an NFL player. He's been that bad, and, it's not looking good for him.
They're tied down to him on the cap hit. Will he be on the team next year?
You would think so, just because, if you do cut him, it actually costs them $2.3 million in cap space. At the same time, I feel like he's almost hurting the team so much that the value might almost be worth it to lose the cap space.
Yeah, the shame of this whole thing is Lee Gowton joins us. Is there's really not that many better alternatives on this Eagles wide receiving core. It's a really bad wide receiving core, as you know it. Turner, though, goes to the 53 today. Everyone's been raving about this guy in the preseason. Didn't make the 53-man roster out of camp. We know that. What do you expect out of a player like Paul Turner on Monday night if he's active?
Not too much to begin with. Obviously the Eagles have worked some guys in here. You look at a Bryce Treggs, the DGB. It's kind of taken those guys time to get into the rotation and everything. I know Paul Turner's been on the practice squad and everything, but still, I think it's going to take time to kind of work him in here in any kind of big role. I think the thing with Turner is that he fought really hard in the preseason. I would say he fought harder to make the roster than Nelson Agholor really did, and he's not a special talent by any means. Obviously, he was an undrafted free agent for a reason. He's been on the practice squad where any team has been available to sign him and hasn't for a reason. So, the expectations can't be too high, but we did see some nice things out of him in preseason when it comes to at least catching the ball. And if the Eagles can actually get some receivers who could actually just simply catch the ball, that would probably be an improvement for them.
It's funny how low our standards are. It's really pathetic right now when we look at this receiving core. All right, let's get to the quarterback, because yesterday on Twitter after the game, you saw a lot of words of criticism for the quarterback in Carson Wentz. You've seen him for 10 games. Evaluate the quarterback for me.
It's really tough. I mean, Carson Wentz got off to a really good start earlier in the year. Then Lane Johnson gets suspended. The offensive line obviously takes a hit. I think the receivers they've gotten worse, I would say, overall as the season got along. The teams they've been playing obviously have been better as well. They're not playing the Browns or the Bears anymore. So it's been a tough spot for the Eagles. I think Wentz is obviously making some mistakes here that don't bode well and are concerns. But overall, my overall impression of Wentz is really almost hard to judge him because he doesn't have anything really to work with at receiver. His offensive line, I think, has been solid overall. But, even the running backs, you don't have a lot of talent there. You're relying on a 33-year-old Darren Sproles really to be your offense and your playmaker. It's just not an ideal situation for a rookie quarterback. And, you have to think back. The Eagles wanted to sit Carson Wentz this whole year. Their plan was to keep Sam Bradford as the starter. That obviously changed when a first-round pick was offered to them. But I think, the patience has to be there with Wentz. I think overall he's shown the franchise quarterback potential, and I think there's a lot of reason for the Eagles to be excited about his future if they can get some pieces around him.
I think he's the real deal from what I'm seeing, and I talked to a lot of former quarterbacks. We had Drew Bledsoe on last week, and he was enamored with the play of Carson Wentz. But I'm going to say this, for the rest of this season, and it's not his fault, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I just try to stop the run and force this guy to throw 35 times a game because his wide receivers, as you know and what we talked about, they can't get open. I know Seattle has a very good defense, but you're going to continue to see a lot of defensive coordinators adopt that approach because right now you kind of, if you're a DC, you want this guy to throw the football because his receivers are so bad.
No, I totally agree. And at the same time, you look at this Eagles running back group, and it's banged up right now. Ryan Matthews suffered a knee injury. Darren Sproles has an injured rib. So, you're down to a rookie Wendell Smallwood, fifth-round pick, and a career backup in Kenyon Barner. So, teams are going to make the Eagles try to throw on them.
What do you think out of this offensive line if Big V can't go on Monday?
It's not the most ideal situation, obviously, now on pretty much your third-string tackle in the sense of starting left guard Alan Barber over to right tackle and having Wisniewski, who I think has been decent at left guard, but still, not the most ideal situation there. And it'll be interesting to see. The Eagles, I'm sure, can't wait to get Lane Johnson back, but that's not going to be until 4 more weeks when there's 2 games left in the season.
And if they want to stay in this race, and it's still very possible for them to get the 6th seed, I think at the end of the day, they'll be on the outside looking in. You knew they had to split these last 2 games, one against the Seahawks, and then this one coming up against the Packers. And this Packers team, they're struggling. They're at 4-6. Washington took care of them pretty easily last night on Sunday Night Football. I know it's early in the week, but when you break down the Packers, what are some keys for the Eagles in this Monday night matchup?
Yeah, I just don't think the Packers are a very good team anymore. I believe they're 8-12 in their last 20. Just not very impressive at all. The defense has obviously been a big issue, getting shredded in the past 2 weeks by the Titans and Washington. So it looks like the Eagles should have some opportunities there to move the ball. Eagles have obviously played well at Lincoln Financial Field this year, so I'm sure that they have that going for them, and that'll help as well. At the same time, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, and there's always the possibility and the threat that, he just returns to form and he kind of just carries that team to a win. I don't really see that happening right now, just given how they're kind of trending and everything seems to be going poorly for the Packers. But it'll be an interesting matchup on Monday Night Football for sure.
Wrapping up with Brendan Lee Gowton from Philly Mag and also BGN Radio. This has been a different Eagles team, undefeated when they're home. How much confidence does that give them that this is a home game, even after a really tough week, what they just had in Seattle?
I think it gives them a lot of confidence because, like you said, they have really played really well at home, and it's not even like they're just winning at home. I mean, they're crushing teams at home. I believe they've outscored their opponents 108 to only 38. So this is a team that, the offense is picked up at home. The defense plays really well at home. I think the Eagles are going to have a lot of confidence here coming back. And that's the thing, you're looking at this final stretch, and if the hope is there for the Eagles to make the playoffs because 4 of these last 6 are at home, and you figure if they can take care of business there, which isn't a guarantee, but you feel good about your chances, then if you can steal at least one of those 2 road games against Cincinnati and Baltimore, then you can get 5 wins out of that, and you're probably in pretty good shape and going into the playoffs with a winning streak.
Yeah, it's also funny how good this NFC East has now turned out to be, because earlier in the year, people were speculating if 9 wins would be enough to win the NFC East. When it's all said and done, when we're in playoff football in January, how many teams does the NFC East send to the playoffs?
I think it's going to be 3. I mean, obviously Dallas is going to win the division. They're on top there. I don't think the Giants are as good as their record indicates at all. I think, I almost don't know how they've got to 7-3. I think they're a decent team. I don't think they're really this good. So it's kind of weird there. They might catch on. I think it's either them or the Eagles. And I think Washington, they're looking pretty good. They could get that number 5 seed there. So it'll be an interesting race to finish out the season. But, yeah, I do think it's 3 teams from the NFC East going to the playoffs this year.
Yeah, with the Giants, because I watch them all the time just doing the show here in Jersey, covering both the Giants and the Eagles. You're right. That Giant record, they're 7-3, and you kind of scratch your head and say, how are they 7-3? It's really because of their defense. Their defense was sensational yesterday. I know you're going up against the Bears. The thing, though, with the Giants, and we've seen this before, they don't always look that impressive, but when it gets to the playoffs, the years that they get in it, they just find a way. And that run game, Brandon, it's starting to get going, which it's been dead last for most of the year in the National Football League.
Yeah, the Giants are a tricky team like that. I mean, you look at the year they won the Super Bowl, and it's hard to say they were the best team in the NFL those years, and it was hard to, look back at those Super Bowl years. And if you're another team and you're saying, wow, I really want to build like the Giants did, because it's almost like they just got hot at the right time. I mean, I remember thinking back to those years, and people wanted Tom Coughlin fired before the Giants even made the playoffs, and then they went on a Super Bowl run. So it's kind of been 2 very fortunate victories for New York there.
Last one for you before we let you on. Final takeaway from yesterday. What is it for you? Because for me, this is what I kind of expected. I didn't think the Birds would go into Seattle and get a victory. I thought it would be about 27-17. Final was 26-15. So what are your final takeaways from yesterday before we let you on?
I think, it's clear that the Eagles aren't an elite team yet, and that's expected. Carson Wentz is in his first year, and the Eagles have a bunch of other moving pieces. Doug Peterson, obviously a rookie head coach as well. But, I thought they showed good fight at the beginning, and I thought that really could have been a ball game. I know Nelson Agholor not making that mistake doesn't necessarily guarantee the Eagles win, but I thought it would have been a lot more competitive for the rest of the way at the very least. And I think, it's a good sign. And at the same time, Seattle's so good at home. Now 36-5 in their last 41 home games. So I didn't expect them to win, and I didn't think they really needed to win because I think, they have these 4 of their last 6 at home down the stretch. And if they can take care of business there and just get one more on the road, they have a decent shot to make the playoffs.
Hey, Brandon, we appreciate the time. Great coverage all season long, and we look forward to seeing it for the rest of the year. Appreciate it, Brandon.
Thanks, Zach. Take it easy.
You too. There's Brendan Lee Gowton joining us from Philly Mag and BGN Radio. Does a tremendous job covering the EAGL-ES Eagles. Okay, let's get to the poll question. We'll give you some early returns on that poll question. It's on my Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's Zachgelb. Will the Eagles sit Nelson Agholor versus the Packers? Now, it's important to note that's not should the Eagles sit Nelson Agholor versus the Packers. Because if that was the case, I think we would have some lopsided results, maybe 100% to 0. That would be the first time we ever have done a poll on this show where it's 100% to 0, unanimous decision. The question, though, is will the Eagles sit Nelson Agholor versus the Packers? Early returns, 67% say no, and 33% say yes. It wouldn't shock me if Doug Peterson decides, I'm going to put Nelson Agholor on the field. If that's the case, you will see limited snaps, though, for Nelson Agholor. Because if he drops a ball on Monday night at home, he's going to hear the boo birds. I believe the right decision is the Eagles should sit Nelson Agholor. Now, will they? That's a tough question. That's why we asked it today. If I'm a betting man right now, I would say it's no. And the reason I say that is because the rest of this wide receiving core is terrible. It's a brutal wide receiving core. Pathetic. It's drop after drop after drop. It's the worst wide receiving core in the league. I think they have to sit down Nelson Agholor. Because if you heard him after the game, this is a man that had no confidence. We'll play you a little bit of Nelson Agholor right now from after the game last night. Here it is.
The refs say to you after that touchdown to Ertz that was called back, they explain to you what the penalty was?
Yeah, they said I wasn't on the ball, and I thought I covered the line as well as I should have, but I should have checked with him. As in, the one thing is you always got to check with the ref.
Right there. Check with the ref.
One of the first things I do. When I lined up, I just hugged the line and tried to focus on what the coverage was and what I need to do.
Why didn't you check with the line judge this time?
For some reason, when I got out there, the first thing on my mind was to just hug the line and, just make sure that, because everybody else behind me was going to be off, to show a clear separation between me and them and then focus on the line. I mean, the defense, because we had a nice little bunch look and they were stacking us. And that was where my mind went to, was something else. I should have done the first thing first.
Seemed like Greg had a message for you when you came off. Greg Lewis, what was he saying to you?
He was disappointed just like I was, because that was a big play. And, and mental errors like that you can't have. And I know better than that, and I shouldn't have done that.
Can you describe the mental error that you had on the drop pass when you were wide open across the seam there?
It's just, I got to get out of my own head. Pressing so much and worried about so much things. I got to go out there and try to catch the ball like this instead of with my hands, because I'm thinking too much and so worried. And that's just such a selfish thing that I need to stop. I need to give my energy to my teammates in this organization and not myself, and feeling so pressured to make every single thing just have fun.
The pressure is growing exponentially. That audio, by the way, courtesy of NJ.com. That's what it is. This guy cannot handle the pressure of playing in Philadelphia. He is fragile. He is weak. And if the coaches of the Eagles want to salvage this guy's career, which I don't think you can salvage in Philadelphia, they need to sit him down this week, because that is someone that is overthinking. That's someone that sounds like he needs to go see a therapist. That's how bad this stuff is. Nelson Agholor needs to sit down this week. Doug Peterson, sit him down on Monday night. You cannot have this man active. Sit him down. He needs to see the game from another perspective, and that's with his butt on the bench. Because yesterday was sickening. Back-to-back plays, penalty, careless. That's a mistake that should never happen. And then your quarterback makes a good throw the next play, and he drops it. About 80 yards in 2 plays that he cost this football team. Hello? It's an obvious decision. Nelson Agholor should not play on Monday night. But for some reason, I have a feeling the coach is going to trot him back out there. I just have that feeling. And a lot of it speaks because of how poorly this wide receiving core is. And one more thing before we get into the break. All you people on Twitter have these hot takes after games, which is fine, because I have hot takes after games too. And then sometimes you wake up the next day and you go, not the brightest thing you've ever said. I was on this, though, right out of the gate following the game. If you're being critical of Carson Wentz, shame on you. And if you want to be critical, I want to hear you today. 609-919-9200. Because if you're critical, I'm going to ask you this, and I'm not denying he's not played great the last few games. But what do you expect out of him is the question I'm going to ask you when he's going up against and going with an offensive line that's just been killed with injuries and wide receivers who can't get any separation. Of course he's going to look bad. Because like I said earlier, any smart defensive coordinator, their number one priority against the Eagles, and they don't have a strong run game, would be to take away the run. Because if you take away the run, you're forcing a rookie quarterback who's bound to make rookie mistakes to throw the ball 35 times a game. And when he throws it 35 plus times a game, he's going to make mistakes because his wide receivers can't catch the ball. And his offensive line doesn't do a consistent job blocking. It's up and down. So when you get pressure and when you stop the run, you force your quarterback to throw the ball, and then boom, I present you an interception and another interception. Let's use our brains, please, folks, before we are so critical of Carson Wentz. I couldn't believe the amount of criticism he was taking after the game yesterday. Do you people watch the game? The offensive line, not good. The wide receivers, they stink. So let's cut the rookie quarterback out of North Dakota State some slack before we're jumping on him. Be patient, folks. Let's get some talent around Carson Wentz. And if he has talent around him and he stinks, then you have every right to be critical. But not at this stage of his career. This is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920, The Jersey. Joe Theismann still to come in the 5 o'clock hour at 5:15. Time right now in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios, 4:39. What we'll do right now is we'll flip the page. We'll talk some Giants next. A very unimpressive win for the Giants yesterday. We'll talk Giants-Bears next, and we'll do some more Nelson Agholor bashing in the 5 o'clock hour. More of the Zach Gelb Show when we get back.